Imagine you are the only living person standing in the underworld. You've dug a pit at the very edge of the world and filled it with fresh blood, because blood is the only thing that lets the lost speak. And now they're coming, hundreds of them, rising up out of the dark and crowding you, and somewhere in that crowd are faces you knew when they were still alive. Let me tell you this story from the Odyssey. The witch Circe had told him the truth, even though he must have wished she hadn't. If he ever wanted to see his home again, she said, there was one more voyage he had to make first, and it was to the one place no living man sails to and returns from. He had to go down to the land of the dead. So he went. He sailed to the very edge of the world, to a country wrapped in fog where the sun never rises and never sets. A gray, sunless land where no living person had ever set foot. He ran the ship up onto that cold shore, and he did exactly what Circe had taught him to do. He dug a pit. Around it, he poured offerings for the dead, honey and milk, sweet wine, clean water, pale barley. And then he cut the throats of a black ram and a black ewe and let the dark blood run down into the trench. Now, you have to understand what the Greeks believed was waiting on the other side, because it wasn't what we picture. There was no fire down there, no devils, no torment for the most. It was just gray. The dead drifted in a dim, witless half-life, faded and hollow, barely able to hold on to their own names. They were shadows of the people they used to be. And the only thing that could wake a soul, the only thing that could give it back its memory and its voice for a little while anyway, was to let it drink fresh blood. And they came for it. Out of the dark, they rose in the hundreds. Young brides who died before their time, old men worn down to nothing by long lives, soldiers still in torn armor, still carrying the wounds that had killed them. The whole crowd of the dead pressing toward the blood in a pit with a thin, terrible crying sound. And Odysseus, one living man, alone among all of them, had to draw his sword and stand over the pit and hold them back, because he could only let them drink one at a time, and he had to choose who. The first soul to reach him was one of his own. It was a young man from his crew, a boy really, named Elpenor. Just days before, back on Circe's island, he had drunk too much and fallen asleep up on the roof. And at dawn, he'd stepped off the edge and broken his neck. And in the rush to leave, they had sailed without him. His body was still lying back there, unburned with no grave. And his ghost begged. "Don't sail on and leave me like this," he said. "Go back, burn my body, give me a grave and a marker, or I will never rest." Because to be dead was one thing. To be dead and forgotten, left unburied with no one to mourn you, that was the worst fate a Greek could imagine. And then he saw her. In that crowd of drifting dead, he saw his own mother. Her name was Anticleia, and the last time Odysseus had seen her, she had been alive and well, standing on the shore of Ithaca, watching her son sail off to a war that would keep him gone for 20 years. He had left her living. He had carried the picture of her in his mind, living the whole way there and back. And now, here she was, among the dead, and he hadn't even known. You can imagine what he wanted to do. He wanted to run to her, to let her drink and pull her into his arms and hear her voice again. But he couldn't, not yet, because Circe had warned him about exactly this moment. Let no one drink before the prophet, not your friends, not even your own blood. So Odysseus had to do something almost beyond bearing. He had to stand there, sword in hand, and keep his own dead mother back from the pit, hold her at the edge with all the rest of the shades, and make her wait while the tears ran down his face. He waited for the one he had crossed the world to find, the blind prophet, Tiresias. The old seer drifted up, drank the blood, and his dead eyes seemed to find him. And he gave Odysseus what he'd come all this way for, the road home. "Yes," he said, "you will reach Ithaca, but it is going to cost you." And then the warning. "You will come to an island where the cattle of the sun graze, golden and beautiful. Whatever you do, do not touch them. Let them be, and you may all still get home. But harm them, and your ship is torn apart, your men all die, and you come home alone, years from now, a broken man on a stranger's ship, to find your own house full of enemies. It was almost the very curse the Cyclops had screamed across the water. The net was already closing. Only then did Odysseus let his mother come to the blood. She drank, and she knew him. "My child," she said, "how are you here, alive, in the land of the dead?" He could barely speak. He asked her the only thing he needed to know. "Mother, how did you die? What took you?" And her answer is one of the saddest things in all of these old stories. It wasn't a sickness, she told him. It wasn't old age or any sudden stroke. She had died of missing him, of waiting and longing and grieving for a son who never came home, until the not knowing wore her heart down and it simply stopped. He had survived a war and a sea full of monsters, and his being gone had quietly killed his mother at home. It was too much. He reached out to hold her, and his arms closed on nothing. He tried again. He threw both arms around her, and she passed straight through them, like a mist, like a shadow, like a dream that slips away the instant you wake. 3 times he reached for his mother. 3 times she poured through his hands. And she said to him, gently, "This is what death is, my son. This is what we all become. When the fire takes the body, the soul lets go and flutters away like a dream. There is nothing left here to hold. If you have ever wished just once that you could hold someone one more time and known in your gut that you never could, then you understand why people have been telling this story for 3,000 years. If it's getting to you, like and subscribe, because what he learns next changes everything. The dead kept coming. Some of them he knew from the war. He saw Agamemnon, the great king who had led the whole Greek army to Troy. And Agamemnon hadn't fallen on the battlefield. He'd survived all of it, sailed home in triumph, and been murdered at his own dinner table the very night he arrived, by his own wife and the man she'd taken while he was gone. A king cut down in the one place he should have been safe, his home. It hung there in the dark like a warning. Every man in that war was clawing his way home to a wife he hadn't seen in years. And not every homecoming ends in love. And then came the greatest of them all, Achilles, the finest warrior who ever lived, the man whose name the Greeks swore would be sung forever. Odysseus, looking at him, tried to offer comfort. "Achilles," he said, "no man alive or dead was ever more blessed than you. While you lived, we honored you like a god. And now, down here, you rule among the dead like a king. Don't grieve." And Achilles stopped him cold. "Don't stand there and sell me death, Odysseus. I would rather be alive," he said, "and a slave, bound to some landless, dirt-poor farmer with barely enough to eat, breaking my back in his fields every day of my life, than be a king over all the glorious dead down here." Think about who is saying that. This is the man who, when he was alive, was given a choice: a long, quiet, ordinary life that no one would ever remember, or a short life that ended in glory, and a name that would last forever. And he chose the glory. He chose to die young and become a legend. And here he is, on the far side of that choice, looking the cleverest man alive in the eye and telling him he got it wrong. That all the glory in the world is not worth one single ordinary day of being alive. And that, not the map, not the prophecy, is what Odysseus really sailed down there to find. He had stood over a pit and watched the most famous man in history beg for one plain mortal day. He had reached for his own mother and closed his arms on smoke. And somewhere in that gray, crowded dark, he finally understood the thing the living spend their whole lives forgetting. That just being alive, ordinary and breathing and able to hold the people you love, is the only treasure there ever was. And he had been throwing it away with both hands. More and more of the dead pressed in around the pit, and a cold fear rose in him, a sense that something even worse was rising up out of that crowd. So he ran. He threw himself back aboard the ship, and they pulled hard on the oars, up and up out of the dark, toward the light and the air and the world of the living. He climbed back toward the sun with the road finally clear in his mind, and his arms still remembered the weight of nothing where his mother should have been. This one stayed with you, and there's someone you think it might reach, share it with them. And right now on your screen is the entire Odyssey saga, every chapter in one place. One of my favorites comes next, a song so beautiful that every sailor who heard it steered straight onto the rocks to get closer, and the one man who found a way to hear it and live. Start from the beginning or keep going. Click it right now, and I'll see you in the next story.